Friends, I stand before you this evening because I'm very concerned. And you've probably spoken with me, many of you, at the door, and I've listened to your concerns. I'm very concerned about a lot of spending that's going on in Washington and in Richmond, a lot of debt that's being generated in Washington and in Richmond, and what that's going to mean for our families. This massive spending and borrowing is chaining our children to unsustainable debt and our grandchildren as well. And that's unacceptable as far as I'm concerned. Our families are hurting, and I know that because I've spoken with you at the door, and I don't believe that's acceptable. I have three things that I want to speak about tonight. I'm going to briefly mention them now. I firmly believe that we cannot get this economy back on track until we get our small businesses back hiring again. I will tell you and affirm with you, going door to door across this city, folks say, Dr. Garrett, we know you're a doctor, we know you can work on health care, but work on jobs. Get our businesses back working, and I am focused on doing that. My specific proposal is to look at tax encouragements, tax incentives, tax credits, tax breaks on our small businesses to get them back hiring again. And as an aside, as you know, I serve on Lynchburg City Council. Next week in City Council, we will be discussing that, just that. Councilmember Perra, and I appreciate your guidance and leadership, sir, as well with this. My second concern is health care, and I have spoken particularly to our seasoned citizens. I don't call you senior citizens, but our seasoned citizens across this district, and they very much are concerned about health care. I realize that comes at the national level, but it has direct implications in our state because we deal with Medicaid funding in our state, and it's very, very important. But more importantly, it's important to our businesses and to our families. They can no longer afford health care, the insurance premiums for health care. And we've got to think creatively and think outside the box. I have those skill sets. I've worked in health care now for almost 28 years, and I'm very enthused and excited to get working on that. And lastly is education. Every individual in this room affirms the need for great education for our children and for our grandchildren. And we all know that. And part of the great problem is focusing our resources in the classroom where they can do the greatest good. Right now, we've got them focused on bureaucracy. Many of you heard, we're now working with City Council on some specific proposals to collaborate and consolidate duplicated systems. Lynchburg City Schools, in the Lynchburg City, there are 15 different departments that we've identified that are duplicated. There's 2 finance departments, 2 accounting departments, 2 human resource departments, 2 bus maintenance, 2 grounds maintenance, on down the line. We've consolidated the first of those programs, procurement. Now, the city schools and the cities procure large contracts under one umbrella, under one contract, and we realize economies of scale. I don't know how much, we've not projected yet how much we will save, but I do believe it is real. And I believe it is sustainable. It is savings we will have year after year. We just heard at a Lynchburg City Council retreat several weeks ago. Lynchburg City Schools for years has been paying for liability insurance for our city schools, for the teachers, the staff, the faculty, and the kids. The Lynchburg City, which owns those 16 buildings, has been paying for years for liability insurance for those 16 schools. Same insurance, right hand didn't know what the left hand is doing. We now have one check bill that we have to pay, and we recognize and realize those savings. Those dollars can go right back into the classroom for teacher salaries, for books, and for computers. I do, however, want to focus on something this evening that I'm very concerned about, and that is this. Delegate Valentine has twice publicly said that I'm misrepresenting her. And this morning, in a gathering of 15 business leaders in our community, Mark Schul said that I'm telling lies. Well, I will set the record straight this evening, and I want to read with you all, and as we have time, and I'll get back to this, I'm sure you have questions on transportation. The question that was asked to Delegate Valentine, from your perspective, what is the #1 unmet budget need for the Commonwealth, and how would you propose to meet this need? And her answer is, I believe transportation is the #1 unmet budget need for our Commonwealth. She was then asked a question, do you agree that major structural changes need to be made in Virginia's current tax system? And her answer is yes. The need for transportation funding is a major need for our Commonwealth. Therefore, a major structural change is needed to provide more money for transportation across Virginia. She was then asked 3 specific questions. Do you agree that Virginia needs additional long-term sustainable transportation financing of at least $1 billion a year for the next 20 years? She didn't say I agree, she said I strongly agree. We need a new $1 billion of revenue. It's the largest unmet need we have, and we've got to restructure our tax system to address that. When she was asked, what revenue sources do you think are appropriate to dedicate to transportation funding? And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Thank you very much.
Well, at least we won't waste any time. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Scott. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming out. I know you all remember my election 3.5 years ago. I was in a special election that lasted 3.5 weeks, and I cannot tell you the number of people who have said to me that is the perfect length of time. I could not agree more. And since that election, I've had many opportunities to speak here in our area in Central Virginia, but I also get invited quite a bit to speak all over Virginia. And sometimes I think they want to know what I look like and how I could possibly get elected in Lynchburg, Virginia. And I go, and believe me, I do my best to represent our area with integrity and dignity, and I hope that I do you all proud. But everywhere that I go, everywhere, there is a very profound common thread. And that thread is that citizens are seeking leaders. They are seeking leaders who will listen, allow everyone to have a voice, and in the end, do what he or she believes is right. They are seeking leaders they can trust. I had a gentleman, and I could not tell you his name, but somebody whispered in my ear one evening, we spend far too much time on right versus left, and not enough time on right versus wrong. I could not agree more. We are living through a global economic crisis that is affecting our entire country, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and each and every one of us. I do not need to tell the people in this room just how serious a time which we are living. And we have just spent 1 week of this campaign on misleading information. I didn't really expect to address the questionnaire so early in the introduction, but I would like to read you a statement from Virginia Free, which is a business organization that represents businesses all over our Commonwealth. I mean, including Central Health, B&W, Schul Furniture Company. Their whole idea is to support legislators who advance free enterprise, responsible pro-government, pro-business government. And the gentleman wrote to me that the Virginia Free Candidate Questionnaire and Delegate Valentine's position on that questionnaire are being represented by her opponent. The questionnaire does not ask candidates whether they would support a tax increase for transportation. To assert otherwise is deliberately misleading. The questionnaire seeks to establish a starting point for a continuing dialogue with state leaders on issues important to business and job creation in Virginia. It is unfortunate the delegates of Valentine's opponent did not even bother to answer the questionnaire. Ladies and gentlemen, do you know what we should be talking about? We in this state have 6.9% unemployment. For 2 consecutive years, we've had declining growth for the very first time in our history. And you know what you should be asking us? How do you balance the budget without raising taxes and still continuing with the core services of Virginia, which is exactly what we have done? How do you support the business community when there aren't cameras and people aren't looking? What have you done to provide tax relief for citizens and businesses?